Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. We are not that far from college football transfer portal season. Now, I know what you're thinking, Torres. The transfer portal doesn't even open until January 2nd. How could you possibly be talking about the college football transfer portal, okay? Well, what I will tell you is, first of all, when your school hires a general manager or director of player personnel, their literal job all day, every day is to just watch tape and get background, right? So, we're watching tape of this, UConn game against Lafayette. UConn's, who's this offensive tackle that's 6'6" for Lafayette? Let's Google him. Let's find out who his high school coach is. Let's find out if he has an agent, and let's find out if he's going to enter the transfer portal in a couple weeks, right? A quick side story, because I want to get to the meat of the topic, but I remember years ago, Jared Verse, who's now balling for the Los Angeles Rams, Florida State was playing Syracuse. They were looking at film of Syracuse, and Syracuse had played Albany earlier in the year. Like, who is this freak at Albany? And they basically started doing research on Jared Verse about 4 or 5 months before he hit the portal, and he was a key piece of 2 really good teams for Florida State, including one that won the ACC, even if, as we know, they did not make the college football playoff. So this stuff, there's an old saying that basically if you start your portal work when a player enters the portal, you are way too late. And so with the season done, the portal isn't technically open until January 2nd, but guys are already saying, look, thank you for the time. They're putting out the emotional graphics, right? Thank you for the time, but after deep consideration, I'm out, okay? And so over the last couple of days, we've gotten reports on a few different names that plan to enter the transfer portal. Just want to spend a few minutes talking about these guys, and I have a feeling this will probably be a pretty big topic into mid to late January. So first name I want to talk about, this one, interesting story, Sam Levit, quarterback at Arizona State. Okay, so first of all, if you remember last year, Arizona State wins the Big 12, makes the college football playoff, almost upsets Texas. And everybody remembers Cam Scattaboo in that game. But what a lot of people forget is that Sam Levit was a very highly touted high school quarterback, began his career at Michigan State, didn't really work out, transfers to Arizona State, and last year was legitimately awesome for Arizona State as they won the Big 12 championship and went to the college football playoff a year ago. Almost 3,000 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Well, he gets banged up earlier this year. He's kind of in and out of the lineup. He certainly regresses. But it was really about 2.5 weeks ago that it became pretty clear that he was probably going to enter the portal. Pete Nakos put out a report. Poor Pete Nakos. Pete Nakos is the guy, when he puts it out, 1, it's happening. But 2, he always gets the pushback from people that don't want information out. By the way, that's what a journalist is supposed to do. That's what he's doing. But I remember the Nico Iamaleava stuff in the spring. And Sam Levit about 3 weeks ago, Pete Nakos reported he's entering the portal. And so the Sam Levit's brother freaked out, posted screenshots on social media. This isn't true. Well, I bring it up because Sunday was Arizona State's team banquet. Sam Levit was not there. And by Monday, it was pretty clearly indicated that Sam Levit was going to enter the transfer portal. Okay, so again, 2 seasons ago, he was awesome. Decides to come back. This year, not so much. And I do think as he goes into his final season of, it'll be his 3rd full season playing. I guess he was technically a redshirt in 2023. He's going for a bigger payday. And I hate to say it, it's the world that we live in. I think Arizona State, transparently, is probably struggling to raise NIL money. Like Kenny Dillingham, right around the time that the first report about Sam Levit came out, Kenny Dillingham did this rant about why doesn't every restaurant in this town have a sandwich named after a player? Like little stuff like that. How do we get more money into this football program was essentially what he was saying. Well, Sam Levit, nothing is official. By the way, I want to be clear with all of these guys. Nothing is official, but it feels like for all intents and purposes that he is going to be in the portal. And listen, I'm not going to start speculating on who's tampering, who's not, who's this, who's that, but he's going to be one of the, if not the most highly coveted players in the portal. And if so, I think any team that needs a quarterback, you should probably assume he is going to be in the conversation for. I think the first one that jumps out is Miami. Not accusing Miami of tampering, not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying Miami has a history with transfer portal quarterbacks. Say that 10 times fast. And to their credit, they've had success. I know everybody wants to tear down Mario Cristobal, but the bottom line is look at his track record. Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick, 10 wins a season ago. Carson Beck, it's easy to forget now. Carson Beck was trending in the total wrong direction. And I'm not saying he's the answer to all of life's quarterback problems, but a pretty good year. He'll probably be a second-round pick this year, going to the college football playoff at 10-2. And so Miami has a track record of having success here. So nothing's official with Sam Levit, but that's a school that makes sense. Texas Tech is another one, and we'll see what ends up happening from here. But the one thing I will say, like I said, I'm assuming that there are already schools in contact with his agent, which I believe is his brother. And I think by the time he actually enters the portal on January 2nd, I would assume it'll be a pretty quick recruitment. Again, I'm just using common sense, just deducting stuff. I honestly haven't heard anything, but I think Miami would make a ton of sense. And I think there's a bunch of other schools that need quarterbacks. By the way, Texas Tech, Will Hammond obviously is the backup to Baron Morton. Does Will Hammond feel like the long-term answer? If not, they may be looking for a quarterback. So those are just a couple schools to keep an eye on. Let's keep it going. Transfer portal. Next name up. It is certainly a name everybody knows. I don't know if it's a name everybody likes, but it is Jackson Arnold. Okay, so this time last year, Jackson Arnold was at Oklahoma. It didn't work out. And I dubbed myself a Jackson Arnold truther. I said, raw deal at Oklahoma, goes there to play for Jeff Lebby. Jeff Lebby leaves, bad OC at Oklahoma. Just give him a fresh start with some better coaching at Auburn. Well, in Jackson Arnold's defense, I don't know if he actually got better coaching at Auburn because the offense was great once Hugh Freeze was gone. But the offense was also great once Jackson Arnold was benched. And the guy that I once upon a time called myself a Jackson Arnold truther, the counter to that is that the offense got much better without him, and he was absolutely terrible. And by the middle of the season, I literally tweeted something out about Jackson Arnold is the worst decision maker I've ever seen in college football. And I watched DJ Uiagalelei for 3 years. But he is in the portal. It's not a surprise. Ashton Daniels replaced Jackson Arnold late in the year. He was better. He wasn't great. Deuce Knight played against Mercer. He was phenomenal. And so those two guys are coming back. Remember, Ashton Daniels was able to preserve his red shirt. And so it becomes pretty clear that Jackson Arnold there is no future for him at Auburn, nor should there be. What I am curious about, one is third time's a charm, but two, what is the interest level for a guy that has now failed at 2 different major conference programs? By the way, I will tell you this. I know for a fact there's one SEC coach, prominent SEC coach in the college football playoff that's actually I think he still is good. He just needs the right coaching. We'll see what ends up happening with Jackson Arnold. I have no strong opinions on if he'll end up at another Power 4 or have to go down to the group of 5. The obvious one is Mississippi State. He almost committed to Mississippi State last year. Again, Jeff Lebby was the guy that recruited him out of high school. They are losing Blake Shapen. I think the big question becomes 2 things. One, they have the freshman there, Kamario Taylor, who was actually pretty good. But then 2, is Jeff Lebby just we got to a bowl game at 5-7 because everybody else opted out. I'm not putting my career on the line for Jackson Arnold, who so far to this point in his career is a coach killer. So we'll see what happens. I saw somebody mention West Virginia with Rich Rod. I actually thought that was a very interesting match that could work. So we'll see what ends up happening. Listen, all these new coaches at these G5s are going to need quarterbacks, Memphis, Tulane, whatever. So we'll see what ends up happening, but I'm just curious what the market will be for Jackson Arnold this year. One more quarterback that I think is just worth mentioning really quick. Jaden Craig from Harvard. Okay, so Jaden Craig from Harvard was Harvard's all-time leading passer and all-time leading touchdown passer in terms of both yardage and touchdown passes. So he enters the portal on, I don't think he didn't technically enter the portal, but he may have actually entered the portal. Let me explain why. He is a senior at Harvard, okay? Now, unless I misunderstand this, I don't think graduate players can play at Harvard, can play in the Ivy League. I think Ivy League schools, you have 4 years to play for. And if you've graduated from college, they don't just let you play a fifth, sixth, seventh year. And so you follow Jaden Craig's career. He's a guy that NFL teams think is a legitimate NFL draft prospect. A lot of NFL teams came through Harvard this year. And I think if he entered the NFL draft, he would be like a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round pick. Well, he told Pete Thamel, among others, that he plans on entering the transfer portal and getting a shot at the power at the FBS level. By the way, the Ivy League forbids graduate students from playing varsity sports. I was correct on that. So he's kind of in an interesting spot. One of the best players in the history of Harvard football, but he's already graduated, which with a year of eligibility, which means he can only either transfer to, likely the FBS or go to the NFL draft. So it sounds like he's going to stay in college. I think he's going to be an interesting prospect to follow. Now, listen, 61% completion percentage. He was very good at a completely different level. I am not ready yet to basically insinuate that he's going to be, one of the biggest this, the biggest that. But I do think somebody is going to take a chance on him at the power conference level. So we'll see what ends up happening there. 25 touchdown passes this year, 61% completion percentage. Just curious, big picture. I think he ends up at the power conference level. I just don't know if it's like I don't know, like if South Carolina lost to Norris Sellers, is that a realistic spot for him or not? I don't know. Just bring it up to very simply say he's an interesting name. A couple more interesting names. CJ Baxter from Texas. This is a little bit of a sad story. CJ Baxter, number 1 running back in his high school class, was part of the Arch Manning recruiting class that I think largely has frankly elevated Texas football. Colin Simmons was in that class. There was a couple others. CJ Baxter was awesome as a freshman. Okay. So as a freshman, this was Texas's last year in the Big 12. He was the Big 12 newcomer of the year, about 700 yards rushing. And unfortunately, an injury before last season, missed all of the 2024 season, tried to come back this year, really never got going. And by that point, I hate to say it, other guys had surpassed him on the depth chart. Now, the thing about ACL injuries and knee injuries, most people say it takes you a full year to get back to feeling 100% like yourself. And so I just bring it up because I do wonder if a fresh start with fresh legs is going to do him the trick. I still think there's something there. As I said, Big 12 newcomer of the year. I think he ends up back at a power conference school. Someone is going to need a running back. He is going to need a shot. I would expect him to end up at a power conference school. You know who else I would expect to end up at a power conference school? Perry Thompson, former basically 5-star recruit, 5-star wide receiver. So I remember it would have been 3 summers ago now. I did a segment on Perry Thompson in the middle of the summer. He flipped from Alabama. DeMarcus Riddick, who has been a very good linebacker for Auburn, flipped from Georgia. And it was like the first moment where you're like, oh, Hugh Freeze has some real recruiting momentum. They were part of a monster top 10 class in 2024 that included Cam Coleman. 2025 class was top 10. And this is, by the way, why Auburn was one of the most coveted jobs in college football this year. Whatever you think of Hugh Freeze, and the coaching certainly left a lot to be desired, there is no doubt that he was an elite recruiter and left the cupboard full. Now, unfortunately, Perry Thompson is not going to stay at Auburn. And I just in some ways feel bad. Maybe there's something, I don't know, producer Matt can tell me off air if there was something bigger picture, but let's be honest. Auburn didn't throw the ball. Basically, they didn't throw the ball well his 2 years on campus. So that's just indisputable. And then 2, when they did, the focal point of the offense was going to be Cam Coleman, who frankly is, he's not Jeremiah Smith, but he's that next level down. And so when we're talking about Perry Thompson as a 5-star, one of the 6 or 7 best wide receivers in a class that included Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, and Ryan Williams, the kid is talented. Just one of those things where took a bet on Auburn. I think it was the right bet at the time. I think we all thought the offense wouldn't be an issue under Hugh Freeze. Didn't work out. He's entering the portal. I think that he's probably going to be pretty successful pretty quickly at another school.